Welcome to the Pursuit of Truth. So two things I wanted to quickly talk about. The first was the Pope, and I've no affiliation to the Catholic Church or the Pope per se, so I don't know very much about it. But obviously I knew that he had double pneumonia and that he had looked like he was getting better. And then on Easter, he was, he said Happy Easter. And I didn't really see very much of that. I've seen clips since then showing that he looked out of breath, tired, frail. At some points he looked, when they were taking the sash off him, aggravated a little bit, or so the thing that concerns me is, and this is like just my speculation, just my thoughts that came to me. I'm not trying to start a conspiracy or anything like that, and I don't know whether am I allowed to have my own thoughts of, the thoughts that came to me. These are just that, I don't know, I guess. Anyway, so the thoughts are that, was it his choice to be out there, or he felt that he had to do it, or he was pressured into doing it? Because they keep saying like that he defied doctors and they told him to rest. But, in these kinds of situations, I could assume that when you're the Pope, that there may be stress put above you, or even though you're the leader, that, like you hear the royal family when they talk about, they have to do this, that, and the other. It's a duty that's bound upon them. And it may not even be anyone saying you have to do it, but it's that duty of service that, and, where that pressure comes from, whether it is internal or external. Because he didn't seem all that happy to be there. But then maybe that was just because of, he was suffering and he wanted to be there, and he was decided he would suffer and take the consequences of that action. Which, of course, they keep saying, well, it's nothing to do with the double pneumonia. Although I don't think double pneumonia and the lung problem, what it does to your lungs, and the fact that he had a bit of a lung missing anyway, probably didn't help. And, maybe he had COPD, or that developed, or the lung issue didn't help with the cerebral stroke that he ended up having, and then the irreversible heart failure. The other thing that worried me was the fact that they called off an ambulance or called off taking him to the hospital with the police escort. And I don't know why, you think, what do they need a police escort to take him to the hospital? You'd think it would be much easier to do it than this. But the fact of the calling it off, to me, seemed odd. Like in a normal environment, if you have a loved one and there's something wrong with them, like they have a stroke, you call an ambulance and they come irrespective. They come even if you are dead. You still wouldn't call it off because they still have to come. Now, I don't know if this is different because he's the Pope and maybe he has his own doctors and that's why they don't need to do that. I don't know. But that, for me, rung a little bit of alarm bells of, I don't know if he had an advance directive or if he had, expression of, if this kind of thing happened that he didn't want to be saved. But it felt to me like someone else made that decision, and whether that's right. Of course, I don't know. Maybe he's surrounded by doctors, his own doctors, and they are able to make that decision because they're a doctor and they considered that no amount of hospitalization would have prevented the irreversible heart failure. Or maybe, I don't know how they could make that decision without the medical equipment around them, and why they didn't just try. Or is it because they felt that if he'd had a stroke, and considering the diabetes and the high blood pressure and the double pneumonia and lung issues, the fact that he was already wheelchair bound by the looks of things, I don't know if he had, there was some mention of edema, whether they felt that if he was to survive, how he would be, and how that would put the problem of being a pope in question. And that's the other thing that worries me. Is that the decision that was made? No, I don't know. I know this is poor speculation, but it's the things that come to my mind when I'm thinking about this. So I don't know what your thoughts are on that. Maybe I'm completely wrong on that. Maybe that's just part of becoming Pope. Or it was just that there were doctors around and they made that clinical decision based on solely on his health and what would be best for him. Or maybe he'd already said that, if this happens, that I don't want to be brought back. I'd rather be with the Maker. I don't know. But it's just, for me, it seems strange to say that you're going to take someone to the hospital because they've had a stroke and then you don't continue with that. Irrespective of what else happens after that, that person should still go to hospital. They should still try to save that person, unless they don't want to be saved, of course. But I don't know. They didn't mention anything about that kind of thing. But maybe they don't mention that. I don't know. But yeah, that's just what my thoughts. I don't know what your thoughts on that. And I'm not trying to it came into my mind, and I just thought I'd verbalise it to think that other people can say, oh, no, it's because this, that, and the other, or this, that, and the other, or, yeah, I suppose, And, the other thing was, today I heard this child, he was being berated, being sworn at by his mother. It looked like she was holding an envelope, and he'd been suspended I heard the word suspended. So she obviously wasn't happy with him, but she was shouting at him quite a bit and his head was down. And I just felt about, if that was Aidan or something, and how, I don't know why it affected me, but it really did affect me, of thinking that, how in life, and it sort of goes back to this Pope thing as well. I think that's the thing I forgot to mention, is that, on Easter Day, he was speaking, saying Happy Easter to everyone, being paraded around. Everyone thought, yes, he's survived, his double pneumonia, which at his age, due to all the things you think, it looked like he wasn't going to. And there he is. And then on Monday in the morning, he's passed away. And then 12 hours later, they tell you how he passed away, which is extremely quick, I felt. Apparently they did it with some kind of, they didn't do a post-mortem by the sounds of it. It was some kind of electrocardial machine or something or other. Well, I don't know how accurate that is. If you're not going to do a post-mortem, how can you tell whether he had COPD or something, or it was a pulmonary embolism or something like that? But maybe they're not allowed to do that to the Pope. I don't know. Because I assume that's what they would do with a normal person, that they'd perform a post-mortem to check that detail. But yeah, the fact that 1 minute he was alive, next minute he's dead, that sort of fragility of life that obviously I've got with my mum since she passed, of thinking that she was, okay, and then suddenly being phoned and told she's being rushed to hospital and never made it. And then this I suppose that's the same thing with this little boy. And I was thinking about, what could he have done? Because his head was down. He wasn't sort of shouting back or anything like that. Like he was the big I am, and sort of, looked like a troublesome kid. I know that can be masked. He maybe had, ADHD or autism or something, and this wasn't his fault. Or maybe someone else was picking on him and he fought back. I don't know what you get suspended for. I've never been suspended, so I don't know. Hopefully my children will never go through that. But I just felt so sorry for him, with his head down, and the fact that he's got this situation now and his mother's angry at him, and, he had a white envelope in her hand. And it's just that fact of, like I always say, and I've always taught myself, is that there are some things that once they happen, you can't take them back. So you always have to be careful. I suppose in a situation where he could be being bullied, maybe he, thought, no, that's enough is enough. And he punched the kid back. He stood up for himself, and I'm giving him a way out. And then he's now taking the punishment of that, for the fact that the school didn't safeguard him. Or maybe he is, he just, I don't know, swore at a teacher or something. I don't know what you would get suspended for. But I just felt sorry for him, and I don't know whether I should be feeling sorry for him, but it's just the fact that, I think it's the same thing in life as that I'm getting taught now a lot, or I'm seeing it a lot more now, is that fragility of choice, of consequence, of action, of time. Like I always say, that I think about my own mortality or my family's mortality, that, everything is normal until it's not. Everything is like, great. And then suddenly something happens and then it's all changed. That is what I hate about life at the moment. But yeah, I don't know what your thoughts are on any of this. It's just my rambling, I guess. I don't know how this fits with the pursuits of truth, but I guess I'm telling the truth, and I just want to know what not that anyone listens to this other than one or two people, and no one ever comments back. But I always ask, maybe in the future, when I'm dead, people will answer all these things, and it'd be like, well, there's no point now because I'm not here, but at least it will help other people who may have similar thoughts or feelings about mortality or death or existence. Anyway, take care, take it easy, God bless and peace.